Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. From just going to quickly have a recap from where I started from, for the sake of people that are just joining us at the moment. So today we're talking about the role of the policy maker before, during, and after COVID-19 pandemic, implication to education in Nigeria. So the four key areas that we're looking at will be the curriculum review, the assessment, infrastructure. So we're looking at quality assurance in the last one as well. And quickly, the next slide, please. Sorry, guys. As I said before, when we look at the curriculum review, the key thing is, as Nigerians, we need to ask ourselves that what worked before COVID-19 can be work again. Unfortunately, it may not be able to work. Because number one, our children have got to be benchmarked with the international world. And we are actually trying to develop that future leaders that will be able to be benchmarked with any other country. So we cannot work in isolation anymore because we're in the digital time. And so that takes us to what exactly we're looking for in our curriculum. Because if you know the end from the beginning, you'll be able to plan for it as a journey. We're looking for how we can develop the whole child. Nigeria has developed very, very good students, or very good graduates, very good experts in the past, with good values. But the core thing that is missing in our education at the moment is value is still there, is in our curriculum, however, it's not being used. So that's something we need to actually find a way to permeate values into every part of the curriculum now. And another thing is the 4 C's. Those are things that we cannot afford to joke with. We're talking of children actually collaborating. A lot of us grew up where we were just learning by ourselves, but we were not collaborating, teamwork. And that's how to actually prepare the 21st century child. It's a core skill that every child needs. Another thing is creativity. When I take this bottle, for example, I must be able to bring out a lot of things from this bottle. We can have group discussion around the bottle. We can make up a lot of stories, and it makes us to actually think creatively. Because not education has moved away from where teacher stands in front and say 2 + 2. What am I saying? Because with that is myopic learning that we all learned during that time. And if we keep on doing that, that means we cannot actually produce the right child for 21st century. So collaboration, critical thinking, communication, and creativity. But when we look at all this, you will see that when you're now going on the journey, how do I want to climb that staircase to the end of my journey? That means everybody must be able to access the curriculum. The private schools must be able to access curriculum. The public schools must be able to access curriculum online. Even if we have to pay for it, now is the time when there is no barrier in paying online anymore. There are so many things if we have to pay the 5,000, but the key thing that we're saying is let everybody access the curriculum. Let it be accessible to the international world. Because with that, it makes us to bring the beauty of it out. At the moment, that's something that a lot of schools are struggling with. In Lagos, for example, when I was teaching in Lagos, with 20,000 schools, a lot of people were not accessing our curriculum effectively well. And so, different associations will now go and print their own and doctor it to suit their needs. And they would have watered down what the curriculum is all about. So that's something that is very key. Another thing is, as a government, children can have a better sense of belonging, because when you look at it, a lot of children are not proud of their environment because nobody's teaching them that. But if we can easily contextualize and localize our curriculum to suit the needs of our children, to suit them, because I mean, for example, in Ogun State, when I got to Ogun State, I told them the trade subject that we're doing. People in Abeokuta, for example, they can do a lot on adire, the tie and dye. And people at the waterside, they do a lot of fisheries. So there are so many things that we can do to contextualize our curriculum to make our children access it better. Another thing is curriculum meeting the challenges of remote learning and with input from industries. Now, this is a time where we've got to look at STEM. I know some people will say STEAM because STEAM has come as well because we need to include arts and design. But at the same time, if we don't embrace STEM now, we're going to be left behind. Because the children of 21st century, they need them to have a proper, profound understanding. Financial literacy, phonics. Phonics was the one that I explained last, because with phonics, a child between 0 to 6 needs a lot of phonics knowledge. When we started during that time, there was a lot of phonics lesson. But that's something that at the moment, if you go to most of our public primary schools, forgive me now, we're putting all the old hands in our early years, the ECCD. And the old hands may not understand what is expected. They're like minders. They're like baby mothers to just come and mother the children. And with that, we are seriously destroying the foundation of education. Because we need early year specialists. NERDC has done well by giving us a framework for ECCD, but are we following it? And that's another area that we might need to look at to see that it suits our children better. So with all that, give me the next slide, please. Now, so what is STEM? STEM is a universal definition. I mean, there's no universal definition of it, but at the same time, STEM workers use their knowledge of science, technology, engineering, and math to try to understand how the world works and to solve problems. I have put solving problem there because that was something I saw. With that, we will be able to trash a lot of problems. There are so many problems that our curriculum, the way it is being delivered, may not help us to trash. Because we need to go back to the root and see how we're actually delivering. The next slide, please. Now, why STEM? STEM is the future of the economy. And that's where the jobs of tomorrow will be. There are no jobs for children of today at all yet. And if we want our children to really flourish with other parts of the world, we've got to embrace them. Go on. Now, if you look at the STEM occupations of today and tomorrow, all these things, I brought them out when I saw it online because everything is all about STEM. It's all about sciences, computer and information research scientists, computer network. When you look at the kind of jobs that we're going to find tomorrow, it's going to be all about STEM. So if we're not careful, our children will be left out if we refuse to actually embrace them. Next slide, please. Now, when you look at all these ones as well, the kind of employment projected 2022, you will see that employment rate is going to be looking more for STEM specialists. And when I say STEM as well, I'm not just looking at science, technology alone, I'm also looking at TVET. Because TVET is another area. I mean, in Lagos, I remember when Governor Fashola was the governor, we wanted to do the Ikoyi Link Bridge, Ikoyi Lekki Bridge. And as at that time, we had to stop that project for 6 months because there were no plumbers. There were no welders. When I got to Ogun State, when Governor Dakwabelu said, okay, we want to know how many unemployed youths we have, we opened a portal. The job portal, within 2 weeks, we had 110,000 graduates, but without skills. So we need skills. And that's why all these things, if we want to really help, we need to go back to the grassroots. I am not talking of where we will wait until a child gets to that age before going for TVET. No. We're talking of when we were in school, we were doing woodwork. We were doing technical drawing. There were so many things that really covered TVET during our time. But at the same time now, it is not that NERDC is not covering it, but are there teachers for it? So, food for thought. Next one, please. So, another thing that has come out is the PSI and the PMI. Now, the PSI, Progressive Science Initiative and Progressive Maths Initiative. Now, the only thing that has made me to bring this is the fact that UK had similar problem in '99 when I became an advanced skill teacher. Now, they had problems because a lot of teachers were not performing. They had problems because lessons were not properly delivered. However, what did they do? What they did was they actually started working on the scheme of work. They digitized lesson plans. Because if we put all our lesson plans online, if we take the best hands here in this room and say, you are doing lesson plans for us for primary 1 to 6, you are doing the one for GSS 1 to 3, that group is doing the one for SS 1 to SS 3, and we follow the PMI and the PSI rule. The PMI, the PSI rule is talking about what are the videos we're going to need, what are the, how are we going to break these lessons down, because everybody talks about something that gets me mad is when people are saying teachers don't have skills. They won't have skills if we don't actually give them the work and the tools. And are we going to drive out, like we said, for example, we've got 25,000 teachers, are we going to drive out 25,000 back on the street to say because they don't have the right skills? Let's give them the right tools. Because if we digitize, and because when I did Digi class in Ogun State, when we did that Digi class, we used all the cream of our state. I didn't use everybody. And with that, they were able to use a curriculum, they were able to do lesson plans, they were able to deliver good interactive lesson plans, and we put them on the learning management system. And so we can share all those resources with our state. So those are the kind of things that PMI, PSI would do in a different state. And the key thing here, it says, but also innovative and effective recommendation for curriculum, because a lot of people have, in Nigeria, we have some cream of our society. Some people are very good. And they can easily interpret the curriculum because not everybody can interpret it. When there is literacy issue, a lot of people will see curriculum they can not even interpret. And the same problem was what UK had as a 99. People were not delivering good lessons. So what they did was to give them lesson plan. They did schemes for everybody. And so they started giving them. So you're not just educating the child, you're also educating the teacher. Yeah. So those are the kind of things that I feel NARDC might want to look into. Next one, please. Now, assessment. Assessment is another key area that we need to look at. Now, when we talk of formative is the ongoing assessment that everybody needs to know during class time, at all times. And with this formative assessment, you will see here, I've written assessing remotely. There is nothing stopping us from assessing remotely anymore. We're in digital time. When I saw all this, we did Digi class for 6 months or for about 5 months before we stopped in Ogun State. And my governor said, Ronke, so how do you know it has worked? How do you know it has impacted on the children? And I knew what it was driving towards. And I said, dear, don't worry, I'll come back to you. And what we did was I set up with all those key examiners of WAEC in Ogun State. And we set up questions. And we declared one Saturday to actually do assessment across Ogun State. Believe you me, children from Abuja they accessed our test on that day. We made it a whole day because if we had made it between an hour or two, people would say there was no light at that time. People would give me a lot of excuses. But the key thing was, please show me that exam quickly. But the key thing was we were able to monitor every child. Next one. No, the previous one. Yes. You can see 17,551 students attempted the test online. And only 17,375 finished the test. Quickly, give me the next one. And look at number of public school children, 8,010. Private school, 9,365. Because with the Digi class, we made sure we were covering for whether you are going to international school, whether you are going to a local school. Because when you look at the British curriculum, the Nigerian curriculum, the American curriculum, there are similarities in the three curricula. They're not so different. The only thing that is different is maths. Is maths curriculum for NAEC? Sorry, I'll keep on pointing to my ears. His own mathematics, for example, is more challenging. However, it's not practical enough. That's the difference between the British curriculum and the Nigerian curriculum. It's English. We need to work on that. Because with English, we need to break it down into genres so that every teacher will understand what is expected. Because that is what is missing. When you look at the curriculum of the Nigerian curriculum, for example, you will see that we have more of grammar. We don't have enough of writing. We don't have enough of comprehension. And what we need to do is, if we want to raise the profile of reading in Nigeria, if we want to raise the profile of English in Nigeria, we've got to do more of reading. In our days, when we were young, so if you remember, every one of us, we were competing on how many books of James Hadley Chase you have read. You know, so the reading culture needs to come back again. We have relaxed. It's good that the digital time is good, but at the same time, what about blended learning? Because we need a bit of both. We cannot afford to say our children will not read. The Kindles can be used. There are so many things that can come. So next one, please. Take me back quickly to assessment, please. So assessment number 2 is we need to be more target-driven as a state, as a country. Because if we're talking about assessment, if principals or leaders of schools don't know what they should be assessing the children on, then we cannot perform. If, for example, you are the state commissioner, so how many schools are performing well in your school, in your state? If they're not performing, so what? What are we going to do? What are the remedies? What are the interventions in place? Because if there are no clear intervention, then why are we saying we're assessing children? Because the key thing is, don't just assess the children for just the sake of it. So what happens afterwards? We're saying we're doing NAEC, we're saying we're doing WAEC. So what happens afterwards? Who is analyzing that result? When we evaluate and analyze our result, what is it telling us? When it tells us that there are gaps in places, then we can work on our gaps. Then we can, because the key thing is, I tell everybody wherever I work, don't just make that child to repeat. Most children that repeated, how many of them performed well afterwards? Go and check, do your research, and tell me how many children repeated their secondary school or primary school, and how many of them, because you would have demoralized them. But we can easily identify children that are not performing. What are the strategies we need to put in place? How do we intervene on time? How do we close those gaps? And those are the kind of things that Nigerian website can have, interventions. Because sometimes you see a child that is 11-year-old that is supposed to be working on the cognitive ability level of primary 6 child, but still working on primary 1 level. So what can we do? How do we close the gap? Because if you actually make that child that is 11-year-old, you take them to primary 1 class, they are emotionally advanced for that class. And so they start looking for boobs of people. They start touching people's bums. Because they're so advanced to that class. And that's what brings in sexual abuse. Because the hormonal growth of that child is different from what is happening in primary 1. So we need to look at all that. Because if other countries, if international world is saying, we don't want that, well, we're doing it here. So targets driven from schools at all levels. Do we have targets? Let every child that comes into school, let them have targets. Because that child can easily work towards that. That's the key thing. Now, assessing remotely, please don't say we cannot assess remotely. We can assess remotely. And I know the question people will ask me is, Ronke, but if you assess remotely, how do you know integrity? I know we will have a 10% that will not have integrity. For example, when we actually assessed 17,553 students, about 20 of them repeated the questions, and we saw that. And so we notified their results. So you can easily monitor all that online now. There are so many things we can do virtually to monitor, to do synchronous formative and asynchronous formative assessment. Move away from the system. Now, another thing is infrastructure. Infrastructure, when when ES and I got to UK, I remember our phones. Our phones were reading from Heathrow Airport. You're welcome to Heathrow Airport. You can now sign up. You can now use this internet provider, you know. Educationists, we need to think about that. Because our people, our teachers are frustrated. If you tell them to use internet, if they don't have the right infrastructure the first time, the second time, the children will switch off, the teachers will switch off. And so, what is the government doing? Because what stops us from having fiber optics? Because it may not be that expensive to have fiber optics in different states, but at the same time, the IGR will increase, education will get better, resources can be shared, a lot of things actually become easy for us. So please, as leaders, I want us to look into that. So training of school personnel, if we're saying they should actually be digital, if we're saying all our teachers should be 21st century compliant, how are we training them? Because not just for somebody to just come in and use PowerPoint in front of us. Not just all those trainings that people will just come and make notes. We want good trainings. We want resources that can actually be robust for our children. We want people that would have actually done a lot of things that will be useful for Nigeria and with Nigerian background. Because sometimes everybody will come and give us another thing that is not our background, and is making our children not to have sense of purpose or sense of belonging to this place. So, training of school personnel on digital literacy, digital citizenship, and 21st century learning pedagogies. 21st century learning pedagogies, all the things that they did during our time may not work again. We've got to understand the language that they understand. I was actually observing a lesson one day in England, and I remember that teacher was going to come out as for capability because she was failing. And at lunchtime, I saw children playing with Ben 10 watch. And I told her, plan that same lesson you did today with Ben 10. When she did the lesson, it was completely outstanding. It was very, very good. Because we need to speak the language that our children are speaking. The children, before COVID-19, we were all saying nobody should bring mobile phones to schools. No. But now, I want to use your mobile phone. We want to turn it around because we've got to use your mobile phone now to our own advantage. But at the same time, do we know how to filter off our children? Because if you don't know how to filter, if you're not security conscious, you will use the mobile phone to turn the life of children into trouble. So there are two sides to it. Education, cheap internet bundle. We need that. Low-cost technological equipment in schools. When we did DD class, when we started with television, 38% of children access us when I checked them. But later we changed to radio. I was able to access 82% of children, but I still had the 18% left. We got to Imeko. Imeko is very near to Republic of Benin. And when we got there, I saw 44 children, 44 SS3 students. And I said, how many of you accessed us? Out of 44, only 4 of them accessed us. And I felt so bad because they are the border, you know. So with that, that is still an area to work on as Nigerians, as leaders in education. So remote learning, and please don't let anybody fool us that it is only digital time. Digital is good. However, you need the 3 families in classes. There must be good blended learning. Because don't forget that in every class, there are 3 families. You've got, if prof, for example, is a visual learner, she wants to just see. And my prof, my doctor here also might be, sorry, sir, I may be wrong with the title. Just God's will. Okay, Mr. God's will may just be a kinesthetic learner. He wants to touch everything. He wants to dismantle. If you have that child in the house that always wants to dismantle, he wants to dismantle things to rebuild it, he would be the one that wants to set up everything for you. That is a kinesthetic learner. So you have that one that will always want to listen. A lot of us seated here, we were the auditory learners in those days. Have you checked your driver? When last did you check your driver? Your driver might be a very good genius because your driver might have been left as a dropout because nobody allowed him to have kinesthetic opportunity. The organizers, those boys that are making your shoes, they are hands-on. They need opportunities like that. And that's why, to me, the computer is good. However, we must not forget that we need to bring in blended learning into education better. Next one. Now, quality assurance is the very last one. With quality assurance, I have a problem here because with quality assurance, for people that have actually gone to UK before, you will see that when Ofsted calls you that we're coming into your school, you're already wetting yourself. And that's because Ofsted is not under Ministry of Education. But when you put, come here, babe. When you put, this is the auditor, and I'm the accountant. Lina, you now put this person here. This person can never talk. This person can never say the truth. If we refuse to empower quality assurance, we can never make education right. Because, yes, you're still a young person. So, it's part of the job. Yes, if the accountant is standing, the accountant is the Ministry of Education. That's the person that does everything on logistics for schools. Now, you are the auditor, you now go to schools, and you now see that there's no good learning. There's no good environment. You want to actually write the right thing for the commissioner. You cannot say it, because you are indicting your boss. So not until when you will see that states that are performing in education, they are states where they are taking away quality assurance out. We need to think about it. How it will work, I don't know what I mean. You have all the leaders in the house. So, another thing is, in some states, when we did the quality assurance book in 2015, that was the first book that Malam Adamu launched. And with that, what we wrote in that book was, it has to be a level 13 upward that has been in the classroom that should be an evaluator. Now, you will see that in some states, you don't have those facilities. Yeah. You make a level 8 officer to go to school, and they're watching prof. Okay.
afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. It's a little announcement. We are expected to go for lunch now. I reconvene by 3:15 to continue.
Is it possible to do walk lunch? And this are here for
Go to the restaurant. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let's finish our arrangements.
Yes, because you're correct. Yeah, on the same page.
What the arrangement here?
Yeah, to agree that maybe yes.
Yeah.
Let me tell my boss.
Thank you.
Okay.
So with that, if I was a level 8 officer, I'm just coming to work and they've made me an evaluator of a state. I now go to prof school and I now stand in front of prof who is a level 17 director. She's actually manning the school. Prof, your school is not in good condition at all. For God's sake, who the heck gave back to you? So those are things, those are the lapses that we have. Number one, I am not good enough to go and advise her. I am not in the place because I've never been into the classroom. So all those things, if we don't get the auditor's area right in education, we might be destroying education. Another thing is frequent monitoring and evaluation. We need to monitor schools regularly. Yes. Yes.
You come to the restaurant.
Can I make a hybrid service? Can you just take a head count and then reserve our food here?
Yes.
Because some
very important.
Can you take a head count and reserve our food?
It's better you go there.
Just.
Let's just finish this. After this,
Thank you. Thank you. So let's finish this. Now, this is almost the last slide now. For quality assurance, we have 7 areas that are very, very key in quality assurance. But today I've only brought 4, and that's because of 4. If we get the 4 right, the 3s will be fine. Now, the key area is achievement and standard. And this is an area that we don't normally measure a lot in schools. That has to do with assessment. That has to do with summative assessment, and that's NAEC, that's WAEC, that's all the anatomy, and those are all the exams.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Those are the examination we do at the end of every term. In some schools, they will do it every 6 weeks. But at the same time, the key thing is not to do examination. The key thing is what happens after the examination. What analysis are we doing? What is it informing us? How many people know about it? And we need to start looking into how we can actually do our assessment better. Because as at our days, when we were 4 in class, if ES comes first, Madam comes second, Sir come third. If I come fourth, my father will nearly kill me. But at the same time, it does not mean that ES is actually working on the right cognitive ability level. So assessment needs to be looked into. As a country, we need to look into assessment and say, what can we do now to actually get it better? Now, teaching and learning. Teaching and learning here, I've mentioned the 4 C's, I've covered it already, that for every child needs the 4 C's for every lesson. And that's why as school leaders, they need to understand what teaching and learning is all about. This is the heart of it. A lot of our children are not getting good teaching and learning. And if they want to get good teaching and learning, it comes to lesson plans. How are we planning lessons? Enough of us wasting too much time on lesson plans. We can actually do it for ourselves. People can now adopt it to suit the needs of their individual classes. I'll take us to at least 3 countries where they don't waste their time to do lesson plans. Because they would have bought lesson plans, they would have done it for the school, they would have done something that suits them, so that when this mom, when she's actually moving to the next class, all she gives me is flash. When ES is going, all he would do to the next teacher is give the flash. So all they're doing is just reviewing the lesson plans. And so, because unconsciously we're wasting time on irrelevant things. And do you know that if you keep on emphasizing that lesson plan must be thorough, people will give us what we're looking for, but the key thing is what are they delivering in classes? And so that takes us into their books. When last did people monitor books? Because if you monitor books, there was a school I went into and I saw very good lesson going on because they were assessing children at every lesson. They were seeing and they were marking. And there was another school I got into. All that they were doing was 6 children's books. I gave it to different ones. I said, read what is on the 29th, read what is on the 21st, and it was the same thing. So that means people are just copying down lessons. They are copying down notes. And with that, people have destroyed lives. Because if you're delivering the curriculum in the right way, and you're telling people to just copy down notes, you might be doing more harm and doing a lot of disservice. Our children of 21st century, they want to form their notes. Because who is the best teacher in 21st century? This child is somebody that can become a facilitator, not somebody that is just standing. It was a time that we had all those myopic teachers. Because if your teacher is just standing every time to tell you what he or she feels, then you will only know what that teacher knows. You can never know anything beyond. But when you have empowered the children, when you have made them to go and learn from other people, when they have done their research, when they're doing interviews, for example, they've got to interview him, they're using a lot of good questioning. And that goes back to our teachers. What kind of questions are they using on the teaching and learning? Because if you ask me, what's your name? My name is Ronke. That is a close question that can never add value to me. But for example, if I say, Mr. Godswill, would you like to tell me about yourself? He's going to think deep before he starts talking to me. So we're talking of how teachers can use a lot of open-ended questions. And with that, Bloom's taxonomy would help us. There are so many things that we can bring into classes. Give them examples. Don't kill teachers. Let's give them samples of questions that they can answer. The third one is care, safety, and guidance. This one, anybody in our schools can become an abuser. There are so many abusers now. Especially our girls, as girls cannot speak out. And with that, sexual abuse, safeguarding, and child protection is a big thing in schools now. That is not making a lot of people to feel safe to want to come to school. But that's something that quality assurance is looking into. Leadership and management, the last one. How many leaders are very, very effective in schools? Because if leaders are effective, is it having an impact on the result of the school? Because if it's not having an impact on the result of the school, why are you calling yourself leaders? As school leaders, whatever you are doing must make a positive impact on the school result. As school board of governors, are you having an impact on the result? As a commissioner, because what I ask directors sometimes, I mean, by the grace of God, we just got a commissioner now. But in the last 16 months, I was leading in Ogun State. And what I was asking my directors would be, so if you bring me memo, how is it going to add value to the children? And we were looking, and gradually people are beginning to fall for that. Because if it's not having any impact on the children, then why do we keep on saying, I'm going for this course, I'm going for that one? If you go for a course, you come back and cascade. Because it's very important. Last one, please. So, this is the last slide. Let's read it together.
Take the first step of faith. You do not have to go staircase. Just take the first step.
Last one. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was very interesting and captivating presentation by the Honorable SC. Maybe I don't know if we requested the first test, yes. So maybe we can have 5 minutes for questions and answers. Yeah, before we go for the lunch. Yes. Sir? Sir? Comments, both questions, comments, and suggestions.
I already made one with Prof. here with me, and I just made a comment that how we describe this type of presenter in the classroom. I used to teach a course on observation. You know, I'm a professor of education, and these are what you call passionate teachers. And when you run these workshops, how do you make the teachers to be passionate? How do you make the teachers, teachers that they just make sure that the children must perform and get to the result that they want, not just let me do the lesson plan. I think those are the ones we have today. I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah. I think the word is engaging. how do we engage the students, particularly the digital native?
Yeah.
In this dispensation, because we have analog teachers
So you
teaching
should
digital
add
native.
that. Add
So
that
engagement.
as part of the goal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know. Okay, sir.
No, go ahead.
No, sir.
Sorry, I think I don't expect less during the talk. The issue of value you have raised is very important because it's what is lacking now. We have lost our value to the extent that you don't know. The children too are confused. Where do they belong to? I mean, so many of us had the advantage of getting these values, which we are now, unfortunately, not extending to our children, because I blame, us for allowing that to erode. Now, the issue of accessibility, of course, again, I would like to say that you can have Nigeria's curriculum on the website now. You check, it's there.
It's
online.
out this year.
Yes, any NDC website, you see it. Both, there is, of course, the one for the senior already has been for a very long time. For the basic, it's already loaded there.
Because you and I look for it, we didn't see it last time.
Yeah, no, last time, how many years?
It's there.
You are talking of many years. Now, with this COVID, that's why what COVID has exposed us.
Please, let's clap for the years.
It's the response to what COVID has, that we said, well, necessary, we have to forego the issue of getting what you are trying to say, the revenue or whatever generated, revenue, whatever. So that has been done actually. Now, with regards to the drawing the scheme of work and the rest, I think here the ministries, the states are guilty. The education resource centers are supposed to be engaged in developing. And NAEC has gone, where if you take any teacher's guide of NAEC, already developed sample, is there a sample of the teachers? All what the Ministry of Education are supposed to do is to have the scheme of work, following the model if they like, or they improve on that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you saw that. Yeah, no, it's there. Now the resource centers, I think we have to emphasize on the ERCs, the Ministries of Education, to really take it very serious on use. Some of them don't even use the curriculum. Yes. Some of them. There was a case that we went to a state, they locked the curriculum, sent to them for 2 years. They didn't even know that it was in the warehouse. No, I'm telling you.
I remember you were the one that told me about teachers.
Yes,
that was when I went to look for it. They were not in schools.
Yeah.
And we now saw them packed up.
Can you imagine? So most of our states are guilty as far as that, and I think is what we should emphasize. This is the state's responsibility to actually drive such kind of exactly. So, and as I said, the outcome of this meeting, Cham, maybe is to emphasize the involvement of the states in getting, first making the curriculum available. The scheme of work is there. They can use the sample that has been provided, and they can easily make their own. That's what they are supposed to do.
The contextualization you talked about
is
very important.
It is very, very important. So we have to emphasize, that so that we draw the state's attention towards getting more serious on use of the curriculum that has been there already. A number of things that you have read there, of course, the issue of the region is very important. With USAID, it's what we are now working towards, because it's very, in fact, it helps not only, even the other literacy you are talking about, because reading is the key, is the foundation. And that is what we are lacking, because we are not giving it the emphasis it deserves. So there will be a lot of, challenges, because this COVID has exposed us to so many, not only the, so many challenges, so many weaknesses in the education sector. So, well, so many of these, I'm sure we will take into
Let me join Junaid, my friend. Looking at one other aspect, I agree with everything he said. I'd like to appreciate my friend Ron. The issue of assessment, remote assessment. Remote assessment is good, although we don't need to take quality assurance for granted when we are doing it. I think there's what we call open book assessment. And open book assessment can look at your book and provided these instruments of assessment are configured to allow open book. So it beholds on the assessment entities, teachers, and corporate body that do assessment to develop test items that comply with remote assessment. If we do it traditionally, it's not going to work. If you like the test you get to your people, how did you know that it's the same standards? Because it's rational test you get. I'm saying it is good, but we need to go deeper than that to develop test items that are compliant with our context. So even if I stay in my home and open my books, it doesn't give me an advantage. It's very critical, so we can do that. Then I would also like to share an idea with ES, my good friend. If you say, let's develop generic scheme of work, what we did at the NAEC is to develop format. Because there are variations in cultural context. The England is different from Nigeria. So when you develop a format, the person learning in Medjugorje is different from the person learning in Borokri. And so the contents have to be different in the scheme of work. The curriculum is generic, the format is generic, but the ingredients of the scheme will not be generic. So that's what I have for now.
I'm sorry, I made a joke before. No, I didn't really make my comment on assessment. Can I just make that comment? For the commissioners of education that are here, I think you should really make a lot of investment in training your teachers on formative assessment. Because our system, our system is a high-stake assessment. That's what we do, NECO, NATEP, and all of us. And so the teachers are in a rush to teach them what they will swallow everything so that they can have A's. But the only way they can develop the creativity, the collaboration, and all those soft skills, it's in the classroom. And it's in the formative assessment, those continuous assessment that they do in the classroom. If you insist on training them so that they can do all those activities and so that the children themselves will develop these holistic skills that will take them to, 21st century skills. That's your job. I know ours is to do assessment. At our level, it is the high-stake assessment. That's what we do. It's your own in the classroom where you're going to emphasize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a rider to the issue of access you made mention of. I'm sure you are referring to this curriculum.
We're using that.
Yeah, it was newly produced just in 2019. So certainly we are going to put it online in due course. But we have also tried to develop in the three major Nigerian languages, and this is Yoruba.
You must give me that.
You will soon get it. It's in print. It's a dummy copy. I'm sure it's cute, it's beautiful, and it's for the first time ever. Yeah, and this is Igbo.
Wow.
Right? No, this one is Igbo. This one is Yoruba. This one is Hausa. Yeah, Manhajar. Karatu da rubutu da lissafi a matakin farko. So they are being printed right now. So I'm sure before the end of the year, we will load them on the net.
There's like brought some hard copies for us now. Take away some hard copies for us.
Yeah, they have been printed. These are dummy copies actually. You will get them. If I can have your address, I'm sure for the state will get it. So, but for you in private school.
I also appreciate the presenter. I also appreciate the presenter. My own area of concern is on the early child children. Emphasis is not in this sector. When you go to schools, we are not adequately taken care of. The importance is not attached to this level.
they feel they are just there to play. And most of the schools, when you go there, they mark them with the primary children in the primary one. So they are underachieving or teaching them above their levels of places, forgetting that that's the foundation.
Yes.
So, and according to the directive from the NCE, all primary schools supposed to have feeders, but when you have the data, we have not gotten to that level. So, and the ones we have, we are not taking care of them. So, a lot of investment needs to go into the early child care. So, I will get it right at that level.
I agree with you because that's why his own children will not perform for NAEC if they don't have the right foundation. If they don't have the right service for their foundation. Because you will see that a lot of our children, when they get to SS3, a lot of them are decoding, they're not comprehending when they are reading. You understand now? A lot of our children are not passing the 3 marks questions because they cannot infer, they cannot think, and that's because the background, the foundation has been very faulty, and that's something that you can't compare to our own background because during that time, education was still much better in public schools. People taught us good phonics lesson, even though it was taught in our Nigerian language. However, there was solid foundation, and that's why any principal or head teacher that is very good would always take the best hands that are very good to ECD classes. Because ECD classes now, what they're doing is they put mothers that are ready to retire in the ECD classes just to go and mother them. And to me, they're doing more harm to those children than good.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
But what is happening, just to educate, we did plan a new program, micro. We had a 9-year gig. 9 years. And then we added 1 year preschool.
It's there. It has its own curriculum.
And it's owned by I'm not just saying it's here. Is it owned by the states implementing it? Are the states implementing it?
That's something that I feel that
Is it on any other website?
Yeah, you see, what is happening is already we have approved. It has been approved that there will be 1 year pre-grammar. In fact, it's something that we have to raise at certain level because now we don't have 6, 3, 3, 4. What we have is 1, 6, 3, 3, 4. 1 year pre-grammar.
You don't have 6 anymore. Particularly in Southwest. In Southwest, there's a big problem. Children are not going to primary 6 anymore. It's not in our
You're on your own, Southwest.
Honestly.
So we can be on the same page. Just hold on. I want to ask you a question. Who is from Federal Ministry of Education in this panel? Can the person just give us a direction with respect to policy? Whether it's been adhered or not, it's a different form.
Okay, she's here. MM is here.
Thank you, gentlemen. What's the issue?
The issue is this. I recall with nostalgia.
Yes,
my good friend and brother David, that in the last 3, 4, 5 years, there is a new policy on education in terms of structure. It is preschool. It is preschool 1 year. It is 3 and 3 and 4. 6, 1, 6, 3, 1, 6, 3, 3, 4. But Southwest is not doing that.
Not all that. Now, we're saying it's private. The policy is private. It's not our provision of the policy. 1 year of we wanted to be you understand? Because our children, they need that.
You're the one thing.
5 years, they don't go to 6 years.
You know what created the poor mom? Your big problem is what she said. She did say that in some schools in Southwest, they stop at primary 5.
It's not only
No,
It's not even only South.
And we are saying,
Now, the issue is, it's not just about development of children, it's not just about the academic. You look at so for children to mature, we all sat down, we are all stakeholders, even the state, the private sector, and we agreed on the policy that we should have 1 year of preschool minimum. 6 primary. Let me just land. So I know you have a lot of so 6 of primary, then 3 junior, 6 and 3 making up basic. Then we now have the senior secondary education 3, and then 4 years of tertiary. So now, but we know that within that policy, people do a lot of things. But then we have the policy guideline to guide us. There's wisdom in what we have given as policy, and then to regulate the operation, both private, the organized private sector, the government at different levels, the state, the local government, and even at the federal. So we have to abide within this provision. There can be aberrations, but then this is what to guide us. So you may shift a little here and there. Some may start early. In some instances, we have 3 years of pre. Children, before they come up, they start going to early primary school. So we have like 3 or 4 years, and then they join primary. Some of them, because they have stayed so long in early kindergarten, nursery, then they are mature. Then they now start. The entry age for primary school is 6 years, but some late starters. Yes, some late starters. Yes. So, but then that is the policy.
That's the policy.
So we cannot change the policy.
No, we're not. Because to me, I believe on it. I see it as a general problem that even private schools are not happy with. You understand? But they can't say no to parents because they believe if they say no to parents, they'll take their children to another school. But to me, for us to do education, for us it is to focus that every child needs to finish.
Yes, even basic education that we said no parent has been taking because it's even nobody has been penalized for not sending a child to school, but we are all to the so thank you. Let us enforce. Thank you very much. After lunch, you can please return to finalize.
What am I coming back? For presentation, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
But I have a problem with it. I think we left hanging, which is the analytical curriculum.
Yes.
How do we imbibe that into our own curriculum? Our curriculum is just very theoretical.
Who told the curriculum is theoretical? I've looked at it.
I've looked at it.
I've taught it for 2 years.
I've looked at it, and I have children, and I have a child who does the British curriculum, and I know what it means. And I know that if I give it to a graduate in Nigeria, it will never pass. And it's a second.
Let me see presentation and tell him how theoretical it is.
It's very theoretical. The British curriculum is theoretical.
Excuse me.
We're using our law.
I'm not going to disagree with you. Let's place the fact of what we have in conversation. I'm not going to disagree with you. You're telling me you say this is A. You said this is black. I said no, it's white. Go and show me it's black. If you convince me, I agree. I completely. I don't want you to start. I don't want you to be emotional. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to ask you one question only. Just a question. You say Nigerian curriculum is theoretical. Can you give me just one example?
Okay, I'll give one example.
I'll give
take the IGSE exam.
No, because Nigerian curriculum.
That's what I'm saying. I take the Nigerian curriculum. Why is that what Nigerian curriculum? I take the exam and compare the content.
So let me answer the question.
Okay, let me be the referee.
Can I answer the question?
So give us example like this.
No, so I've said that.
Give me example.
Put the IGSE the temperature exam. It's a British.
No, start with
Our own curriculum.
Yes,
No.
Calm down, start it now. Give example.
I'm an example of what I want. Let me go into this. In our own comprehension, for example, when we ask that question in comprehension, is that look at you tell the child to write an essay, for example. In the British curriculum, you don't ask that. As a matter of fact, you give a very abstract, for a secondary school, give them grade 11 or grade 10. You give a concept and you ask the child to read and to rewrite in his own word or her own way the same content. What you have read in that passage. And that takes place even at primary, maybe grade 10, maybe even grade 9. And that is what runs from the beginning, in that curriculum, up to the child graduate. We don't do that. That our curriculum don't take care of that. Don't teach our children according to that kind of analysis of thinking, of being able to produce their own inferential. She was talking about inferential. Our curriculum is not as long as that.
Hold on. This is the chair.
Let me ask you.
And I'm going to say, see, I asked one question.
I explained to her. I gave one example. The chair said I gave one example.
You have not addressed the question.
The chair said I gave one example.
No, you're talking about assessment.
No, assessment is part of curriculum.
No, you said
no, assessment is part of curriculum. Because you don't get to assessment content.
Let us talk intelligently. Don't shout.
Let me
teach me, I will support.
Remember that as a moderator,
curriculum is not, assessment is not part of curriculum. Anywhere in the world.
If I can support you.
Anywhere in the world.
If I can support you, sir.
I'm coming. Anywhere in the world.
I learned that rest.
No, just hold on. Anywhere in the world, Professor Bioma teach it all over the world.
Let's move forward now.
Curriculum is not part of assessment. And one question. If you convince me, the United can say, United, go and review the curriculum. Check it out.
Let me
as one case,
point
to the curriculum, take any subject, point to the section, and convince us that thing is theoretical.
I have taught you
so she made that point in our presentation. So let's have and I agree with her.
Yeah, I have taught the two curriculum. If, for example, you take English for example, English will tell you write composition about how you spent your last holiday. The UK thing would have broken it down. On the UK, we will have a genre in place groups. As we have gone to it today, we can have an instructional writing, and children will start writing instructions on how to make jollof rice, or how they went on their holiday, or what they did. So there are so many things that they do that break it down to. But as it's not broken down at all. You understand? Our curriculum is not broken down.
You're listening not to. See, we're not on the same page. See, let me tell you. We're not on the same page.
Can you forward it to my mail?
We agree on the discussion.
Then
you're talking for assessment.
Can I make
it's not in the curriculum. Say right.
No. Writing.
Assessment is based on the curriculum.
And writing
Based on the you assess. No, you
Can
assess.
somebody carry my books and go there?
Listen, we're just waiting.
We are all we're still on now. You assess.
This is practical. Doctor, this is practical. This is implementation. This is implementation.
You assess the content of the course
and carry my things and go back to me.
Otherwise,
Okay, let me ask you one.
I think maybe that's part of the problem we have here.
It's not wrong. Please, gentlemen, listen. I'm going to say that.
Let me tell you something that
curriculum is not based on assessment.
no, we assess the content of curriculum.
Hold on. Please hold on.
This Professor Bioma
Calm down.
I want to say something. Listen, I want to say something. Listen, please. There's something that will make you wonder.
It's okay.
We have a very interesting interaction.
You know that Just recently, a Nigerian American was elected into the U.S. Congress also. A Nigerian American. Now the lady, I'm not sure it's Congress. There are two different levels. Yeah, I'm talking about the one in Washington D.C. Now, these are people. Our children are making waves outside. Many of them schooled in Nigeria.
Who is running the film?
And they went through our education system. So if they are doing well, and when they enter the American schools, and even schools in the UK, they do very well. That means that there's something about our education, about our system, that is good. They compete, and they
we are rigorous.
My children schooled, they were schooling in Nigeria in primary school. And we went on sabbatical leave. They went into school in America and they were flying. They were doing well.
They didn't go to the right.
So what I'm trying to say is this.
Prof, your children
definitely don't want to listen. No, they have made up their mind. They've made up their mind. There's something you don't know. Are we wrong? Let me tell you what. You see my sister? And I've been with her for I know her
This is a
I know that guy. Are we running? Which one? No.
Should we time again? I think I received it.
Yeah, I know. Okay, there's another one.
Okay.
I will find out.
They are the stakeholders in the
They want somebody who will not end.
But our children are doing
Honestly, sir, excuse me, sir. Please, let's continue. Please. We have a very interactive session.
Channel this.
Yes, so please, let's continue.
As I speak, don't discuss your question.
Please.
My own to put perspective.
There are different systems. Our own system, like we use reader. You know this reader, the reader we use. You know in Nigeria, English they are talking about. You know the reader, if it's a good the author. Sorry, we use the curriculum. The curriculum doesn't have everything. The curriculum just has teaching aids. You know, I'm also an author. I'm one of the authors of the modular English.
Did he go?
So I know much about this.
But you received it.
Yes, it is enough.
It has the assessment aids. It doesn't have everything.
Shall I just?
Yes, it has all those things. So the reader goes beyond those areas they are mentioning. The textbook that they use, if it's a good one they are using, it's the one that leads them into, okay, you have just come back from holiday. I know I use funny stories in my writing. Then you come back. Write about what you have learned, all those things. People cannot have all those things. You don't have to have all those things. But it has teaching hints, it has hints. It gives hints to the teacher.
Not the NAEC it has everything that we need to scheme up, but everything is stated there. It's there. It's not big at all.
It's not.
It's very comprehensive.
It is. So
all curriculums are very
the problem is teachers. Like I was discussing with my sister.
It's overloaded. And it's a problem for you. I have a school, it's overloaded. It is subject for the okay, you are talking about different things now. You are talking about the number of subjects. Yes. Yeah, someone was telling me, oh, let's put this, let's do it. Someone wrote me from Lagos. Tell them, I'm even forgotten the area you want us to be. I'm like, no, we can't have curriculum for everything. We integrate these things, we fuse them in the existing subjects, in the existing curriculum. So, and the teacher doesn't have to use everything. Those are suggestions.
Right, so send message send.
The number of subjects, the number of subjects. Yeah, the number of subjects. Yeah, too many subjects.
So they don't have time to